Namaskar. I am Indian pharmaceutical consultant Sachin Bhalekar, working with Cyclone Pharmaceuticals Private Limited as a chief consultant and handling GMP compliances and regulatory affairs. As there is a what topic and the major discussion topic of industry is going on, that is revised Schedule M. So there are many confusions about revised Schedule M implementation, and authorities are also somewhere having ambiguity about the compliances under revised Schedule M. So I am taking this opportunity to explain the industry what exactly is the revised Schedule M, and this is the first video of the series. So there will be around 14 to 15 videos will be displayed about the compliances part of revised Schedule M. Everyone knows there are around 13 chapters have been introduced in the revised Schedule M, and it is a vast act made by the government. In today's video, we will see only introductory part and what will be the impacts on the industry and what needs to be done for compliance of the revised Schedule M. Many of my friends have declared their videos, they have explained revised Schedule M nicely. Many seminars are being organized commercially by peoples. Many industries are conducting their own workshops for the revised Schedule M. And everyone is explaining about revised Schedule M is in compliance or in line with the international guidelines. Some are comparing this with PICS guidelines, some are comparing with this EU guidelines, or some are comparing with this with US guidelines. Now some companies are saying that we are already compliant to WHO, we are already compliant to EU, we are already compliant to PEAKS, we are already compliant to other regulations which are higher regulations of the world. So automatically it will be complied with Schedule M. So मेरे दोस्तों, भारत ने अब एक्ट में परिवर्तन किया है. मतलब we are going through transformation in Drug and Cosmetics Act, and this revised Schedule M is the part of the same, and it has been amended with descriptive manner. And only one thing we have to remember about revised Schedule M, that this is not guideline. I am repeating, many people are saying in their talks, speaks, seminars that these are guidelines. These are not guidelines. This is act which has been implemented through government GR, government regulation, and it has been amended through the act by parliament. So इसका इम्पोर्टेंट जान लीजिए. जो हमारे फ्रेंड्स बोल रहे हैं कि दिस इज गाइडलाइन, दिस इज नॉट गाइडलाइन. WHO, TR are guidelines. EU is guideline, PICS is guideline, and guidelines are non-mandatory. I am repeating, guidelines are non-mandatory. We have to interpret the guideline, we have to comply the points of the guideline, and authority which will be inspecting, they will interpret with their ways and they will ask explanation about the points. So guidelines have to be interpreted proper way, and it has to be used for compliance, GMP compliances and audit compliances. But Schedule M is not guideline. It is part of law, it is part of rule, it is part of act, and so this is mandatory. So we are going to see every chapter of the Schedule M in my videos, and you keep watching the same. Today I will only explain the thing that this is not guideline, this is act. And if we are comparing that Schedule M is now upgraded to the level of the PICS or European Union, if this is the case, then it is most difficult task for all industry or pharmaceutical industry to follow this act, not the guideline. So please understand difference between guideline and the act. We all industrialists are facing many audits of the regulatory authorities or FDA inspectors, local FDA inspectors, DCGI FDA inspectors. And when FDA inspector decides, if your BMR is not complying with the basic concept of documentation, and if there are some cuttings and there are no justifications provided for the same, they are immediately threatening or they are immediately declaring that you are not complying with the Schedule M guidelines, and hence they are issuing us notice why we shall not stop the manufacturing of your facility. Please understand the grievous part of this. This is very serious thing. Now in revised Schedule M part, Act has defined everything crucially, everything elaborated. Around 5 more chapters have been introduced. Dosage forms have been segregated. Liquid is having different guidelines. Solids are having different guidelines. Biologicals are having different guidelines. Not guideline. Again I am saying sections, chapters. Each and every aspect of the act, aspect of the clauses, aspect of the chapter, and we have to understand it very carefully, and then we have to make our system stringent and we have to follow the same. Now already you people knows, as a industry practitioners, you people knows, India has divided its pharmaceutical industry in non-regulated, means Schedule M compliant units, semi-regulated, means who are exporting to many semi-regulated countries where certain regulations are not that much stringent, and third is regulated. Now if we are claiming that our Schedule M guideline, Schedule M Act or Drug and Cosmetic Act is now that much stringent that we are comparing this with PICS, means we are following now international regulations, highly regulated part, means we are now highly regulated country. अब जो बोल रहे थे शेड्यूल एम कंपनी है, हम लोग ऐसे ही बनाएंगे और बेच देंगे, मेरे पास इक्विपमेंट नहीं है, मेरे पास मैन पावर नहीं है, मेरे पास डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं है, मेरे पास सॉफ्टवेयर नहीं है, मेरे पास एसओपीज नहीं है, सेमी रेगुलेटेड वाले हम लोगों को ये कंट्री में जाना है तो ये रेगुलेशंस फॉलो करना है. अब क्या करना है? अब तो हर एक रेगुलेशन फॉलो करना पड़ेगा और टाइमलाइन तो खत्म हो गई. 2023 से दिसंबर 2023 से 6 मंथ्स का टाइम फ्रेम था 250 करोड़ के कम आगे के कंपनी के लिए, और 250 करोड़ के बिलो कंपनी के लिए अब 4-5 दिन है आपके हाथ में. So it is not that much easy that everyone is claiming that yes, we are compliant to Schedule M. Big players are saying we are already compliant to PICS, so Schedule M is nothing for us. But study the guidelines carefully of PICS EU, what they are saying. They are not making this mandatory, and study the Schedule M, which is part of Drug and Cosmetic Acts and have been declared by Parliament under government regulation, is signed by President of India, and then it has been implemented. So this is having different importance as far as Indian systems are considered. Simple clause. If company is having 100 products, 200 products in stability studies, if your stability study is getting failed, you have to inform immediately to regulatory bodies. If company is having 500 products in the stability, if they are failing with certain products, they have informed immediately to the regulatory authorities. So there are many such clauses have been added. Recall, one of the clause. So these things needs to be considered, and I will explain you entire things in my next videos, and we will discuss chapter wise, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 15, 13, up to 13 there are chapters. So all chapters we will explain. We will see the what exactly comparative part of Schedule M, other guidelines, and QMS part. So many things are there which are put without considering anything. Means computer system validation. Act is speaking about computer system validation and changes in the computer system or changes in the computerized systems or softwares. But what things needs to be there, what shall be covered under these things, that has not been explained. So we will study these guidelines one by one, our guidelines and our act one by one. We will compare the same, and then you will come to know what Schedule M is exactly. So today just remember that Schedule M implementation timeline is ending, and we have to follow this act because this is act in India now. Don't be under impression कुछ नहीं होगा, मैनेज कर लेंगे. बहुत सारे जो कंसल्टेंट्स है या जो इंडस्ट्री के कुछ प्लेयर्स है जिन लोगों को पहले से ही सिर्फ शेड्यूल एम में ही काम करने की आदत पड़ी है, नॉन जीएमपी में काम करने की आदत पड़ी है, वो लोग अभी भी अंडर इंप्रेशन है कि हम लोग मैनेज कर लेंगे, हम लोग एडजस्ट कर लेंगे. लेकिन एटलीस्ट व्हाट इंडियन गवर्नमेंट इज थिंकिंग अबाउट, what our industry is thinking about, and what world is looking towards us about the quality aspects, about the GMP aspects, about the upgradation, we have to look towards the same, and we have to implement Schedule M very strictly. और हिस्ट्री अगर आप देखोगे 2008 में जब Schedule M रिवाइज हुआ था तो अराउंड 40% ऑफ यूनिट्स हैव टू बी स्ट्रक डाउन और शट डाउन because they could not comply environmental condition mostly, and majorly the AHU has to be installed in every unit. So many players have to be shut down their units. So now for Schedule M it will take time, but definitely everyone has to implement the same because vigilance is there. Previously there was no electronic systems with FDA. Now FDA is having electronic systems, FDA is having officers, and inspection vigilance has been increased. And if some officers are not studying the Schedule M properly and they are going word by word and they are not interpreting with industry way, it will be very difficult to survive, or it will be very difficult to handle the things. आज के लिए इतना ही. कंटिन्यूएशन में मैं सचिन भालेकर आपके साथ जुड़ा रहूंगा, and we will discuss Schedule M in depth till your understanding. Thank you very much. Act has defined everything crucially, everything elaborated. Around 5 more chapters have been introduced. Dosage forms have been segregated. Liquid is having different guidelines. Solids are having different guidelines. Biologicals are having different guidelines. Not guideline. Again, I am saying sections, chapters. Chapters and sections defined in the Act. So new chapters have been introduced. QMS is now defined as new chapter in the Act. Risk assessment is the new chapter in the Act. APQR is the new chapter in the Act. So now these are the chapters of the Act, and when this is Act, this is mandatory provisions of the Act which we have to follow as in industry practice. So understand this basic difference. today many companies ने we are complying with, हम लोगों का ऑलरेडी EU कंप्लायंट है, हम लोगों का ऑलरेडी पिक्स कंप्लायंट है, तो हम लोगों को जरूरत नहीं है, हम लोग तो ऐसे ही शेड्यूल हम कंप्लायंट हो गए। नहीं, अब ये पार्ट छोड़ दीजिए, इंस्पेक्शन कितने क्रूशियल लेवल पे होंगे या कौन अथॉरिटी कितने एक्ट फॉलो करेंगे, कहां तक वो पढ़ेंगे और कहां तक वो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, वो भी एक पार्ट है कि अपने अथॉरिटीज वो लेवल पे के लेवल तक कॉम्पिटेंट है क्या, ये भी क्वेश्चन है, बट दैट इज डिफरेंट पार्ट बिकॉज दे आर गोइंग टू कम फॉर इंस्पेक्शन विद द रूल बुक, विद द चेकलिस्ट और विद द act in their hand, and they will match word to word your practices. Now this is not new to us. What will happen next, what they are going to do, how you are going to manage the inspections and all these things, this is very different part. But we must understand at least what are differences made in the act, what are differences made in the regulations, and what is mandatory, what is not mandatory, how to interpret every clause of every section, every chapter of the act, and how we have to modify our documentation. This part we have to necessarily study. Because some provisions are there which are even not followed by international regulations or not specified in the international guidelines, that things have been mentioned very particularly in our guidelines. For example, control samples. Control samples of finished product or finished goods have to be retained till the expiry of till the 1 year after expiry of the finished product. That is one. APIs have to be retained with same manner. Excipient have to be now retained for 2 years. Previously it was not defined in the act. Now it is defined. Now my question is that many international guidelines also is not defined this much specified. In excipients they are specifying excipients other than solvents and water. So understand. So whatever was the ambiguity in previous regulations, they have made it very much particular, and that is part of act now. This is statement by act and we have to follow this mandatorily. Many things are there. There are amendments in stability, there are amendments in, they have explained risk assessment very deeply. APQRs have to be maintained for every product. For that it is having different chapter. Environmental monitoring we were doing for working conditions. Now it has to be done for ideal conditions also. Non-working conditions means ideal conditions during the routine production. So we have to study each and every aspect of the act, aspect of the clauses, aspect of the chapter, and we have to understand it very carefully, and then we have to make our system stringent and we have to follow the same. Now already you people knows, as a industry practitioners you people knows, India has divided its pharmaceutical industry in non-regulated means Schedule M compliant units, semi-regulated means who are exporting to many semi-regulated countries where certain regulations are not that much stringent, and third is regulated. Now if we are claiming that our Schedule M guideline, Schedule M Act or Drug and Cosmetic Act is now that much stringent that we are comparing this with PICS, means we are following now international regulations, highly regulated part, means we are now highly regulated country. अब जो बोल रहे थे शेड्यूल एम कंपनी है, हम लोग ऐसे ही बनाएंगे और बेच देंगे, मेरे पास इक्विपमेंट नहीं है, मेरे पास मैन पावर नहीं है, मेरे पास डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं है, मेरे पास सॉफ्टवेयर नहीं है, मेरे पास एसओपीज नहीं है, सेमी रेगुलेटेड वाले हम लोगों को ये कंट्री में जाना है तो ये रेगुलेशंस फॉलो करना है। अब क्या करना है? अब तो हर एक रेगुलेशन फॉलो करना पड़ेगा और टाइमलाइन तो खत्म हो गई। 2023 से दिसंबर 2023 से 6 मंथ्स का टाइम फ्रेम था 250 करोड़ के कम आगे की कंपनी के लिए, और 250 करोड़ के बिलो कंपनी के लिए अब 4-5 दिन है आपके हाथ में. So it is not that much easy that everyone is claiming that yes, we are compliant to Schedule M. Big players are saying we are already compliant to PIC, so Schedule M is nothing for us. But study the guidelines carefully of PIC's EU, what they are saying. They are not making this mandatory, and study the Schedule M, which is part of Drug and Cosmetic Act and have been declared by Parliament under government regulation, is signed by President of India, and then it has been implemented. So this is having different importance as far as Indian systems are considered.